Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Responsible Travel and Tourism webinar brought to you by Baxter Media, Green Step, and Trees for Travel. This webinar will be moderated by Susan Webb, President of Vox International, and Bob Moet, Executive Editor of Baxter Media. We have several exciting guests attending this webinar who we will be speaking to very shortly. We have Angela Nagy, CEO of Green Step Solutions, Nico Nicholas, CEO and co-founder of Trees for Travel Limited, Genevieve Hano, Development Manager of the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, Kalani Ka'anaana, Chief Brand Officer with the Hawaii Tourism Authority, and Stephanie Bishop, Managing Director of Canada with the Globus family of brands. I'm Dan McDonald with Baxter Media, and today is Thursday, April 7th. Just before we get into things, I'd like to let our viewers know that at the end of each segment of this webinar, you'll have the chance to ask questions. To do so, just type those into the Q&A tab of the public chat box, which will be towards the right-hand side of your screen, and those questions will be answered during each Q&A portion. And remember, this is a live session, so your patience is appreciated during any technical difficulties that might arise. I will now hand things over to Bob Moet, Executive Editor at Baxter Media. Welcome, Bob, and welcome, Angela.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you could join us this afternoon. Founded in 2008, Green Step Solutions is a sustainability services company based in Kelowna, BC. Through its tourism division, Green Step provides practical, flexible solutions to measure and improve the sustainability performance of both tourism businesses and destinations. The company offers assessments, training, and workshops, sustainability strategy development, and certification programs to meet the wide range of sustainability objectives and challenges faced by the industry. Green Step is also the only North American-based certification provider offering Global Sustainable Tourism Council recognized criteria suitable for all types of tourism businesses and destinations. Leading the Green Step team is company CEO Angela Nagy. Angela and her team have worked to develop sustainability strategies and supporting action plans for Destination BC, the BC Hotel Association, the BC Restaurant and Food Services Association, Canada West Ski Areas Association, Kootenay Rockies Tourism Association, as well as a number of other regional and destination marketing organizations, along with hundreds of tourism operators throughout many provinces across Canada. Today, Angela will help you understand some of the differences in terminology as it relates to responsible tourism, and she'll also offer insights on how a business or destination is deemed to be sustainable. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you so much, Bob, for the introduction, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone who has joined us today. As mentioned, my name is Angela Nagy, and I'm the President and CEO of Green Step Solutions. And as a sponsor for this session today, I'm very excited to have the opportunity to provide a primer on the subject of responsible tourism. And I would first like to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Socioeconomic people here in Kelowna, British Columbia, where I am very grateful to live, work, and play. And to kick off this session for you today, I'm going to walk you through some of the key areas of responsible tourism and provide a primer. So I'm going to look at a quick overview of Green Step, provide some definitions, principles, and history around the subject of sustainable and responsible tourism, discuss the demand for this type of tourism, dive a little bit into the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and then provide some examples of the types of criteria that are used to assess the sustainability performance of both tourism businesses as well as tourism destinations. So I founded Green Step in 2008 to help businesses and organizations measure and improve their sustainability performance. And to date, we've worked with thousands of businesses across a number of sectors. And through our Sustainable Tourism division, we offer assessment certification tools, consulting, and support specifically for tourism businesses and destinations. And we really try to practice what we preach. We have been a certified B Corp since 2015. We're powered by 100% renewable energy through Bullfrog Power. And each year we conduct a carbon footprint measurement with our carbon software. And we have been certified as carbon neutral through another organization. And as I'm sure you have seen over the past decade or two, there have been many terms used to describe tourism that is better for people and the environment. And some of the most common terms include ecotourism, responsible tourism, and most recently, the term regenerative tourism has emerged. So I'd love to look at each of these, what each of these terms means, and I know our speakers today are going to dive into these subjects even further. So ecotourism was one of the first things that we heard out there, but it really is a type of sustainable tourism product that brings guests into relatively undisturbed or wild areas in order to help those guests experience nature. It's typically very low impact, for example, sailing, hiking, kayaking, mountain biking, and often promotes principles of natural conservation, and sometimes local cultural is integrated as well. But not every type of tourism operator can offer an ecotourism type of experience, but ecotourism can be regenerative, it can be responsible, and it can be sustainable. Regenerative tourism is much broader and is really a way of developing or offering tourism and tourism experiences either at the destination or at the product level. And it looks at ways that travelers and the industry can leave things better than they found them, creating a net positive impact. And it often requires place-based solutions and a place-based approach that considers the unique circumstances and opportunities of the host community. It could be a tourism business that creates conditions for employment where people can thrive and grow while escaping the cycle of poverty. It could be an agritourism operator that is building back soils and ecosystems to support climate change adaptation, carbon sequestration, and biodiversity. It could be a lodge that is designed to produce more energy and harvest more water than it consumes. Or it could be an experience that develops cross-cultural understanding and respect for Indigenous peoples and other types of cultural diversity. And then responsible tourism is really a term that is used interchangeably with the term sustainable tourism. But since sometimes people think of sustainability as just to do with the environment, responsible tourism has been adopted as a term used by the industry to help really encompass the four pillars of sustainability of economic, social, environmental, and cultural. Now, looking at sustainable tourism and where that came from, it really encompasses all of these things. And it was at the World Summit on Sustainable Tourism where the term was born and where it was defined as tourism that takes full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and host communities, with the objective of retaining the economic and social advantages of tourism development while reducing or mitigating the impacts on the natural, historic, cultural, or social environment. It was also stated at the World Summit on Sustainable Tourism that the question is no longer if sustainable tourism is a viable solution, but rather just how far can we take it to realize tourism's full potential to bring benefits to local communities, support green growth and economies, foster innovation, safeguard cultural and natural heritage, and protect the environment. And I think these are all wonderful, wonderful things that tourism can do besides being a job creator and an experience for guests. According to the UN World Tourism Organization, sustainable tourism should address a number of key areas. It should make optimal use of environmental resources, maintaining essential ecological processes, and helping to conserve natural heritage and biodiversity. It should also respect the socio-cultural authenticity of host communities, conserving their built and living cultural heritage and traditional values, and contribute to intercultural understanding and tolerance. And it should ensure viable, long-term economic operations, providing those socioeconomic benefits to all stakeholders that are fairly distributed, including stable employment and income earning opportunities and social services to host communities and contributing to poverty alleviation. It's a lot to ask of tourism and of a sector, but I truly believe tourism has the opportunity to do all of these things. And tourism destinations and businesses around the world are embracing sustainable tourism in response to environmental and social issues, but also to increasing demand from travelers who are becoming more and more aware of these issues and demanding more responsible business. Research from Booking.com supports that this demand is increasing. They've shown that 87% of travelers want more sustainable travel options, and 73% would be more likely to choose an accommodation provider if it had implemented sustainability practices. According to this particular survey, the biggest impact concerns for travelers include excess waste, threats to local wildlife and natural habitats, overcrowding of popular sites and destinations, and carbon emissions. Deloitte and National Geographic have also conducted research on visitor behavior and future trends, identifying that sustainability will become, and indeed has become, a defining issue for the industry and a top priority for travelers. And while this is really great news for those of us interested in advancing sustainability, it is a very complex subject, and it can be difficult for tourism destinations, businesses, travelers, and travel advisors to know what to do, what to look for, or even how to talk and start the conversation with guests and other stakeholders about these subjects. And thankfully, there have been several international, national, regional, and local organizations that have been created or are undertaking training and processes and programs. And now systematic approaches have been developed to help the entire industry navigate this journey to sustainability. The Global Sustainable Tourism Council, or the GSTC, is one of these organizations at the international level. The GSTC, if you're not familiar, develops and manages the Global Sustainable Tourism Council criteria, which provides global standards for sustainable travel and tourism. They originally started in 2007 as a partnership that was initiated by the Rainforest Alliance, the United Nations Environment Program, or UNEP, the United Nations Foundation, and the United Nations World Tourism Organization, and it involved a total of 32 organizations. Their purpose was to foster an increased understanding of sustainable tourism practices and the adoption of universal sustainable tourism principles. Since this time, they have released criteria for both tourism destinations and industry, both of which have gone through several revisions to help ensure that they remain relevant and offer a roadmap for continuous improvement. Now, the GSTC is not a certification body themselves. Rather, they support other certification bodies in two ways. They do a formal review or recognition of other organizations' criteria, and through the formal review and accreditation of the certification processes that these certification bodies use. And these certification bodies can then develop certification standards and programs for tourism businesses and destinations, like GreenStep has done, and submit them to the GSTC for this recognition or accreditation, which then provides their customers and ultimately the travelers with the assurance that the criteria meets internationally recognized standards. And the GSTC criteria ultimately serve as the global baseline standard for sustainability in travel and tourism. And beyond being used as the basis for certification, they're also used for education and awareness raising, policy making for businesses and government agencies and other organizations, and for measurement and evaluation of sustainability performance. And there are dozens of certification programs and standards that have had their criteria recognized by the GSTC, including ours, and you can find these at the gstccouncil.org website. And by connecting with these organizations, you can find businesses and destinations that have been assessed and or certified to meet the criteria outlined by the GSTC. And it's important to consider how these assessments take place. Some are purely self-assessments, some are virtual and require evidence to be submitted and reviewed and to provide accountability and credibility. And some are on site, and the entire process has been accredited by the GSTC to meet best practices for certification. Both Booking.com and Google are now sharing those accommodation providers that meet several of the GSTC recognized standards, and you can learn more at the GSTC website. But all of these standards will cover, if they've been recognized by the GSTC, the key areas of the GSTC criteria, which include sustainable management, socioeconomic impacts, cultural impacts, and environmental impacts. And to wrap up this introductory primer for you today, and before the other presenters begin, let's look at what types of things a certification program would look at based on the GSTC recognized criteria that we've developed to meet that international standard. And please note that this is just a sampling of some of the criteria that we look at, or that other certification providers would look at, which includes hundreds of indicators in total. But we wanted to give you a little sample of what are we looking at when we assess the performance of a business or a destination. So the first category is management, and that's looking at whether effective sustainability planning and management is taking place. So we look at things like, does the organization have an action plan, measurable goals and tracking of their performance? Have they engaged their employees? Do they have a sustainability green team or somebody leading these efforts? To what extent are visitors being engaged around sustainability to help inform and inspire them while they're having their experience? How are marketing and communications messaging being used to help promote and provide accurate information about the sustainability performance of the organization? The next section is a socioeconomic section, and that is really designed to ensure viable long-term economic operations, providing those socioeconomic benefits back to stakeholders. And the criteria that we look at are, is this organization supporting social development in their community and within the industry? What are they doing with regards to employment, training, and equal opportunity around sustainability and diversity? Do they have a sustainable purchasing policy in place that prioritizes the local economy or more sustainable goods and services? And are there accessible facilities, and how are they marketing these accessible facilities? And is their marketing accessible to those with diverse abilities? Cultural is the next category, and that's really looking at respecting the sociocultural authenticity of host communities, conserving their built and living cultural heritage and traditional values, and contributing to that intercultural understanding and tolerance. And here we're looking at, to what extent is that organization protecting cultural heritage, artifacts, and living cultures? How are they managing or working with those living cultures to manage the visitor interactions? How are they ensuring that interpretation and education is done by those storytellers and those knowledge holders? And are they featuring local guides and local arts and crafts from both local cultures and other types of artisans? And finally, the last section is the environmental section, where we look at maintaining essential ecological processes to help conserve the natural heritage and biodiversity of the place. And here we look at things like resource consumption and conservation, both energy and water, solid waste and wastewater management, carbon emissions and transportation, protecting those sensitive ecosystems, and ideally restoring those sensitive ecosystems, and managing visitor interactions with the natural environment. So I hope that's given you a really quick overview of the subjects of sustainable tourism, responsible tourism, and regenerative tourism. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. And of course, please feel free to reach out to myself or my colleague Jen after this presentation if any of your questions don't get answered today.
Thank you so much, Angela. And yeah, we'll take a couple minutes now just to answer any questions that were submitted by the audience. And Richard, so you touched upon this earlier already, but I think his question might have been submitted before you spoke about it. Richard is asking, what is the difference between responsible and regenerative tourism, and which term is more inclusive?
Oh, that's a great question. As mentioned before, the term sustainable tourism and responsible tourism are often used interchangeably. My personal opinion, after doing a lot of deep thinking, and I wrote a whole blog post about it, entitled, "Is Regenerative Tourism More Sustainable?" I think regenerative tourism is one of many pieces of sustainable tourism. And as mentioned, regeneration is really looking at healing, whether it's healing relationships between people, healing the earth, healing communities, and it really is an integral part of sustainability. And really, I would say the end goal of sustainability isn't just to reduce negative impacts and reduce harm, but really it is to regenerate. So I think they really go hand in hand.
Excellent. Thank you, Angela. And then a question was submitted that I can answer. Steve was wondering if the recorded version will be available at a later date. Can I receive a copy of this presentation? And yes, definitely. This is being recorded, and I'm going to be emailing it to everyone tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow being April 8th. Let me just double check here. I don't think any other questions were submitted yet. We can definitely get to more of them later on. Yeah, so no other questions were submitted. So thank you so much, Angela. It was fantastic to have you here today. And I will now hand things over to Susan Webb, Nico Nicholas, and Stephanie Bishop.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everybody. It's great to see you virtually, and thank you all for joining us today.
Hello.
That was a really excellent overview. Thank you, Angela. My name's Sue Webb, and I am president and owner of Vox International, which is a destination marketing company. And I can just attest, my company for the last year has been going through an accreditation program that Angela was talking about. And it has been so eye-opening about all those different things she just mentioned that we had to look at as a company, and getting our staff engaged and how we purchase things, how we handle events, our travel. So it's a really amazing process. And the conversation now about responsible, sustainable tourism is everywhere. I mean, we're seeing it in the newspapers every day. We're starting this conversation. I'm on SCOL International, worldwide tourism association, and I'm on the Sustainable Tourism Committee globally. And we had a meeting this morning, and people in Australia and India and Mexico, the United States, all around the world, we're all starting to be, I think, more involved with this very, very important discussion. So it's great to be here, and I'll be talking about this. It's so important. And I'm so thrilled today we have Nico Nicholas and Stephanie Bishop to talk about what they're doing to help, as Angela said, help our planet and how can travel and tourism help in making sure that we're being responsible and sustainable. So first of all, let me introduce you to Nico. Nico is a CEO and co-founder of Trees for Travel. He's a true business entrepreneur at heart and specializing in innovation and technology. He, over the years, has successfully built companies in a multitude of sectors and has been justly acknowledged through various nominations and awards received over the years. He's a contagious leader, as you're going to see in a minute, and with a can-do attitude, who is now devoting his time to one of the world's biggest challenge, climate change, with his wife, Elke. So I think that you're going to learn a little bit more about the things we can do. And then we're going to talk to Stephanie from Globus, family of companies, to talk about what they're doing to help their travelers and you as travel professionals be more responsible. So Nico, lovely to see you. And congrats, you won another award last week. So tell us a little bit about Trees for Travel.
Thanks, Susan. Well, I mean, we started this during the pandemic, and it might seem like a crazy time to start a sort of like support for travel during a pandemic when no one's traveling. But we were actually just about to launch a new travel company, and that was related to weather. And my wife Elke actually just said, well, why don't we plant a tree with every booking that we take? And I said, oh, hang on a minute, we know a lot of people in travel, so maybe we should ask them and see what they think. And we started reaching out to some of our colleagues in travel, and they just loved the idea so much And so we actually started developing it during 2020. We launched during 2021. And during these last 2 years, we have really evolved the whole product into something that is robust, just so strong and so definitive about what we're actually achieving. We felt that a lot of the programs out there were very kind of like greenwash, that they weren't, there was no engagement or nothing that people could relate to. And that's why we kind of like took the tree as the basis for our connection with the consumer, but then we backed that up with certified carbon credits, which are through the investment into renewable energy. Now, when we're planting trees, we also ensure that we're planting trees in developing countries so that we actually support up to 13 of the 17 United Nations sustainability goals. And, so we support wildlife, we support rewilding, local communities, poverty. We give people the dignity of employment when they just don't know where to turn. And the forests we plant as well, we ensure that when we're planting forests, the communities can live with those forests and they can earn an income from those forests. Because if you don't look after the people who are living around the forest and they just stick the trees in the ground, a few years later, they'll be chopped down and used as firewood. So we really sort of like go to every extent possible to try to make sure that we're doing what we say and we're backing that up with that. So, oh, Lynn, today will be my second tree. Oh, great.
So Nico, I think you've got a few slides to show us exactly what Trees for Travel is, and very much whether there's a lot of travel agents and travel companies on today of how they can start to get the conversation with their clients and partners about trees.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark, yes, the travel agency portal is going to be available this week.
At the end of at this discussion, we'll answer the all the questions and answers that are being asked.
Sure. So I know that this is a very bold statement to make, that we make travel planet and people positive. And this kind of like goes along the lines of what Angela was saying about, regenerative travel. We do this in a slightly different way, but we do it through tree planting and investment into renewable energy. And by working in this hybrid method, we can actually achieve these 13 sustainable development goals, which I just mentioned in my introduction. Now, the thing is that we feel that this is so vitally important to actually not just focus on carbon or on one or two different aspects of SDGs, as they're called. And this is United Nations goals, which have been put forward to actually help our environment, not only from travel, but in every industry and even ways of life in our daily life, so that we can actually really ensure that our planet is being cared for. So we do that through our global reforestation projects, where we're investing into projects in developing countries such as Haiti, Nepal, Mozambique, Madagascar, Indonesia, Kenya. So we're planting trees, and then we use part of the money that we receive to actually invest into renewable energy. Part of which is we have a project called Island Love, where we're doing our own renewable energy projects as well. And this is in the Bahamas and Caribbean, where we're actually putting in our own solar and our own geothermal, and then we're selling that power back and we're reinvesting the majority of that money into more renewable energy. Now, by the way we're doing that and selling the power, it means that we can snowball our efforts, and it means that we can actually invest into more renewable energy. So we're not only drawing down carbon by planting trees, but we're also actually reducing the emissions, because I don't know if anyone knows, but the Caribbean, Bahamas, they use diesel-powered generators to power the islands. So it's very dirty and it's very expensive. So we take the tree as the basis. It's so that people can relate to this. If I tell you that your trip from Toronto to Hawaii is going to be 15 trees, you might understand that gives you something that you can relate to. But if I tell you it's going to be 15,000 kilos of CO2, you might think, well, is that a lot? Isn't it a lot? How do I deal with that? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to use the tree as the most simplistic way of giving people something that they can relate to and helping them understand what the effect is, and giving them a simple way to actually compensate their travel. So this is where we use the first 10 years of a tree as the basis for the calculation. And then when we invest into the, sorry, I've gone too far there. When we invest into renewable energy, we equal this amount of CO2 with United Nations certified carbon credits. So every tree has a connection to a certificate which is actually listed on the United Nations website. So that's irrevocable proof that the job is actually done immediately. The other reason that we actually invest into renewables as well as tree planting is because there's been a lot of skepticism around tree planting. And secondly, there are no guarantees when it comes to nature. There are forest fires, as we know, and there are storms, and we can't guarantee whether things will actually happen, but we need to make sure that we really are reducing the carbon that is being emitted. Now, so by doing the two together, this hybrid method, we can actually achieve what we need to achieve. Now, there's still even a little bit left over, which is either used for further investment into renewable energy, or investment into sustainable aviation fuel development, or into projects that some of our partners actually wish us to invest into, which are local to them or important to them. So the dashboard, the consumer gets a very, very simple message, which is that when you take a trip, we'll plant a tree for the price of a coffee. There are some examples of some trips here. So I can't actually read it, but I'll come in. So Chicago to Jamaica, return flight and 7 nights in a hotel is 8 trees. It is extremely affordable when you compare this to the price of travel. And it is something that really and truly we should really all be engaging with and doing, because it also ensures that when people are traveling, that they are leaving that positive impact either on impoverished communities, or they're helping to reduce or invest into renewable energies, etc. And it is so simple to do, and it gives them something that they can really engage with. They get a dashboard so that they can follow their trees. We're providing videos and photos. We're going to have drone footage of the plantations. We actually plant the seedlings, the seeds in nurseries. We pay extra to have nurseries so that the seeds are actually grown to saplings, so they're strong. Every tree comes with a part of the payment for the trees, pays for forest guards, so the forests are looked after. And then you've got that photography. We show you where the plantations are so that you can really relate to what's going on, and the consumers as well. And they get a balance where they can actually work on, they can see how they're performing. Even though the CO2 is immediately offset, they still see how their trees are evolving and how they're moving forward. This is actually the agent dashboard that I was just asked about. It is a way for agents to, we've got a script there, we've got FAQs, so if anybody asks you any questions, you've got the answers to them. We're happy to do webinars so that we can actually show you how to actually speak about this. And what you do is basically you just put the trip in, and then you can either gift trees, you can gift 1 tree, or you can gift all the trees that are required. You can sell trees, and when you sell trees, it's 4 Canadian dollars per tree you sell them at, but we plant a second tree as a gift from you at no cost to the agent. So this is how that works. Now, the other way, you can actually just email the traveler to tell them about the projects, to tell them that you're engaged with us so that they can actually engage with us themselves, and then there's no involvement from you whatsoever. And if they actually follow the link and they actually they purchase trees, then again that 2-for-1 offer would be carried through, and that's it. So
thank you so much, Nico.
there you
And
go.
we'll take a couple minutes now just for the questions that were submitted.
Sure.
Maybe or you want to do it now, or should we wait till after Stephanie?
Oh, we can wait till the end, just because that's actually good, because it gives people time to
because there
submit
could
questions.
be some other.
Great.
Thank you, and I think that for everyone on the call today, that you can see the opportunities of how we can help as a tourism industry, help with offsetting the carbons. And a great way is by working with amazing partners like Stephanie at Globus family of brands. And she is a partner. Globus is a partner with Trees for Travel. So Stephanie, why don't you tell us a little bit about Globus's commitment to responsible, sustainable tourism and other things you're doing, as well as your partnership with Trees for Travel? You're on mute. We're all going to have a T-shirt at the end of this. You're on mute.
There we go. You're on now, Stephanie.
There we go. Sorry about that. And thank you so much. You know, I was listening to the speakers, and I'm really thrilled to be part of this panel. And it made me think of a little caption that I read, and I keep close to my heart when it's coming time to look at what can we do, because life is all about taking action and being engaged. And one of the things that I read on a very regular basis that really helps me focus on, you know, little steps make a big difference is a quote actually from Barack Obama. And he, in his quote, would say to you, the best way not to feel hopeless is to start and to do something. Don't wait for good things to happen to you. If you go out and make some good things happen, you will fill the world with hope, and you will fill yourself with hope. And when it comes to our planet, the people, the places, you know, we're very fortunate in the travel industry to have this opportunity. And our customers also have elevated their expectation of experiences when they travel. So, you know, when it comes to Trees for Travel and tourism, as a company, Globus Family of Brands has always had the ethos of doing the right thing. It's part of being a family-owned company with owners that are philanthropists in their own right. And I know for our company, about 4 years ago, we decided we wanted to do more, take more proactive approach to sustainability programs, and to really understand what we have done thus far, and to take some meaningful steps moving forward. So we've done quite a few initiatives, and obviously Trees for Travel is one of the things that we hold very close to our heart. And that was if we think back of our executives around the world, the genesis of our program called Lighthouse Project. It's now become one of the pillars in our business, and everything that everyone does in our organization really will have a Lighthouse Project initiative tied into it. We like Trees for Travel as an offsetting program because it's simple, it's clear, and it's easy to understand. Life's very complicated in so many ways. We need to keep things simple. And in our business, at the Globus Family of Brands, we are experts at simplifying very complex back-end logistics. So this was for us a real good opportunity. It's not hard to grasp the concept, but customers, you know, they can see it, it's clear, and they can understand it. And so we love this initiative and hold it close to our heart, knowing that, you know, trees are, and seeing the effect of those trees is a very powerful and meaningful statement to support.
So Stephanie, as a supplier, how are you using Trees for Travel as an offset program? Are you actually gifting it to consumers that travel with you on your cruises, or you're on your tours, or working with travel agent groups? Just as a supplier, how can you sort of see promoting this to your travel agent partners as well as travelers?
Absolutely. You know, I could share a little test that we did, which you were at last fall, just before the Christmas. It was pretty much one of the first industry events that we had in the Toronto area. And we decided that the focus of our booth would be around trees for travel. Yes, there was, overwhelming love of, everyone's getting back together for the first time. But and our booth was very busy. And the reason why it was busy had nothing to do with the product. It had to do that we put at the forefront the Trees for Travel initiative. And we gifted to each advisor that came to our booth a leaf, which represents a leaf of the Trees for Travel. And our team was extremely happy with the success of that initiative. And it just solidified, that yes, we have an incredible portfolio of product, breadth and depth around the world. But what people want to know is that they can make a difference. And with this initiative, they can make a huge difference. It all starts with simple, small steps that are meaningful and relevant to all of us in our day-to-day life. It's a bit like when you go to the grocery store. I know for myself, and many people don't like to go to the grocery store, but I do. I want to support products. So simple things like a banana. I will pay more for my bananas because it's meaningful in terms of where it came from and everything that has happened in the journey of that simple banana. And I take the trees in a similar concept.
Excellent, thank you. And Nico, other than you showed us like offsetting your plane travel, and it's really it can offset as well people's meetings, their own business travel, right? There's other things you could use Trees for Travel to help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, first of all, Stephanie, you guys are wonderful to work with. Okay. And you're actually one of the first leisure companies who has embraced us in the way you have embraced us. And I'm so proud to have you as partners.
Thank you.
It was just absolutely wonderful hearing that. So you've really kind of made me feel really kind of like really good. Thank you. Susan, yes, absolutely. We're actually creating measurement tools as well to, again, simplify everything. So we do both leisure and business travel, and that has brought us into things such as hotel calculators for hotels to use, and for meetings and events where even the food is measured. And actually, with our meetings and events tool, it's actually also going to email the delegates so that the delegates can actually enter their own travel data, so that you can get a true calculation. Now, part of that is going to be detail which people won't really want to engage in. And when that detail isn't forthcoming from people, we're going to take an average and we're going to use averages. But the main thing about this is actually it's about education. So the thing is that the more you can educate and the more you can actually make something feel really easy for people to achieve, then people will engage more with it. And that is, it's common knowledge that if people can see what they're doing has an effect, they're more likely to continue doing it.
Yes.
And
I know, having my own trees, of course, it's so great to see how many trees you're accumulating and where they are in the world. I think that's great. Well, I know time-wise, because we've got two presenters, and just to let everyone know on the call, my company Vox, we love this program with Trees for Travel, and now we're a partner. We offset all of our travel and all of our events. If you come to any of our client events, we offset them by planting trees, and work with Stephanie and the partners that the tour operators that like Stephanie and the cruise lines to help in North America. So we'll work with any of you in this in North America on putting you on these programs and help train you. It's really exciting. And there's some partners like Ensemble Travel is a partner, and as well as some other exciting companies around the world. So it's a very cool program. And I even have Carrie Murata, some of you know, who is our chief tree hugger for Vox and Trees for Travel. And she even dressed up in Stephanie's booth as a tree at that event last year. So we'll make it fun and easy to understand. So Dan, I think there's a few questions, and if you'd like to ask Stephanie and Nico, please.
That's right, yeah. So Susanna is asking, what is the percentage of trees that usually survive from planting to their adulthood?
The average is around 95%, and that's because what we do is we don't just chuck seeds into the ground. We're actually growing the seedling. They grow to saplings that are about 12 to 18 inches tall, and that way they're stronger, and then they're actually cared for the first 2 years, and then they have monitoring afterwards. And then because of the types of plants, we're planting indigenous saplings, so that it's always what is going to grow healthily where we're planting, but we are making sure that they have protection, that they're looked after, and so yes, so it's quite a high percentage.
Good. Dan?
I believe I was muted. Sorry about that. That's fantastic, though. I mean, that's a really, really good survival rate.
Yes.
And Robert's asking, is there a list for travel advisors of those suppliers who are connected with Trees for Travel?
There are some of our providers are on our website. However, we are actually going to be we've actually got quite a lot of new ones recently, and we're going to be doing we're going to be separating so that when people come onto our website, we're going to actually suggest that consumers who come to us will actually go to use our partners to book their travel. And we've got to work out how we're going to organize that, because it's going to have to be regional, and it's going to have to be so yes, so we absolutely want to do that. We want to, this is a two-way street. We want to support those who are supporting us, and this is something that it's a collaborative effort, so we need to do that all together.
Right, of course. And Lynn is asking, Nico, will you be getting into other industries as well? The film industry is getting into sustainable options to make their footprint smaller.
Well, we're just about to launch Trees for Fashion, and we do have. I just saw that actually we do have domain names such as Trees for Film, Trees for Films, Trees for Movies. We've got a lot of different various brands. At the moment, travel is kind of like it's all we can cope with at this time, but we're growing incredibly quickly. And this is definitely something which I think has a lot more room for growth. So yes, we will be when we can, but we want to do this job properly first, and then go to the next stage with the other things.
Definitely. Sounds great. And Peggy is asking, I may have missed this, but how would I go about purchasing trees for clients for certain destinations? For example, a trip to the Dominican Republic.
So you would have the dashboard that I showed you in the presentation. And then what you would do is you put the trip data in, and then you can either purchase the trees for them, or you can sell the trees to them, or you can just send off an email and allow the client to purchase the trees themselves. So our preferred method is obviously when trees are gifted, because that's the highest conversion. However, we understand also that it's not always possible. We have some luxury travel who are actually covering the whole trip. Some are actually giving a couple of trees or one tree just to help that get started, and that is actually really brilliant, because it's that educational part that is so important. And once people start seeing that coming in, and the trip automatically gets added into their dashboard when an agent uses their dash. So when you put in a calculation for a trip and you send a gifted tree to a traveler, that trip and the tree goes into their dashboard when they sign up. So they don't have to go and put it in themselves, and then they can see. So if it is if it's a trip to the Dominican Republic, and it's 7 trees, say, return, and the travel advisor gifts 1 tree, the client will know that to make their trip climate positive, they would need to purchase another 6 trees. They would have to purchase 3, and then the other 3 would come as a gift from the travel advisor, additional, at no cost to them.
Well,
I think fantastic. At the end, what we'll do is we'll make sure that everybody that's on the webinar today has a link to the website and also a contact, so that you can contact us and we can give more information. But it's very easy. Trees for Travel on the website, and you'll see the dashboard, and we can help you with that afterwards. But it's great.
And someone was asking just now about whether the link can be sent to us. If I can possibly just include it in the follow-up email that goes out to everyone tomorrow.
Good. I'll send it to you, Dan, tomorrow, and that would be great.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Nico Nicholas, Susan Webb, and Stephanie Bishop. It was amazing having you here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, everybody.
I will now hand things over to Bob Moet and Kalani Ka'ana'ana.
Afternoon again, everyone. My mother used to say that a little knowledge. Father was overheard that conversation. He'd be quick to point out that if that was the case, I was going to be in a whole lot of trouble. I found there was a simple solution. You find the people who know what they're talking about, and you ask them for help. So today I'm pleased to let you know that I've found 2 people who know what they're talking about when it comes to regenerative tourism. Genevieve Huneau is the development manager of the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, or ITAC, and a regenerative tourism specialist with a long-standing commitment to social and environmental justice. She also has more than a decade of experience integrating sustainable tourism systems with specialties in Indigenous tourism, gender and outdoor recreation, regional food systems management, and community-driven tourism development. And she worked closely with nonprofit organizations, governments, entrepreneurs, innovators, and social enterprises across Canada and internationally to integrate regenerative practices across their work. My second guest is Kalani Ka'ana'ana, who is the Chief Brand Officer of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. As the state agency responsible for providing comprehensive management of tourism for the Hawaiian Islands, its goal is Malamaku Home, which means caring for my beloved home. And through regenerative tourism, empowers the community to have a voice in tourism's future, restores the environment, works to perpetuate the Hawaiian culture, recognizes Hawaii's multi-ethnic cultures, and supports responsible economic growth. Kalani is responsible for overseeing HTA's various initiatives outlined in its 2020-2025 strategic plan in the areas of community empowerment, stewardship of the Hawaiian culture, preservation of natural resources, and brand management. He joined HTA in 2016 and most recently served as its Director of Hawaiian Cultural Affairs and Natural Resources. Genevieve, Kalani, welcome.
Aloha. Thank you.
Hi. Listen, I wanted to talk to the 2 of you about responsible tourism because a little voice kept telling me that you were doing something different. So I guess the best place to start is to see whether that little voice is right or not. So Kalani, maybe I can start with you. Is Hawaii doing something different? And if it is, what's so different about it?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me today. Aloha, everyone. So good to virtually see you all. How do I say it? I think we are, and I think we're on a path and we're on a journey. Is there room for improvement? Certainly. Is there a greater level of consciousness around our work and how we do tourism in Hawaii? Certainly. And so I think that a lot of things have shifted probably around 2018 is when some of our contractors that do our marketing started to sort of make shifts in how we position the Hawaiian Islands, how we educate visitors before they arrive in destination, how we continue that communication with them while they're in destination, and then even when they head back home. So short answer, yes. Long answer, there's more to it than that.
Genevieve, is the Indigenous tourism industry taking a different approach to responsible tourism? And again, how is that approach different?
Yeah. So first, I'd love just to give a little bit of context of who ITAC is. So
Please.
ITAC, the acronym Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, like you had said, Bob, is a national not-for-profit that functions under 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars are development, leadership, partnership, and marketing. So essentially, we're a marketing and management organization that works with Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit tourism businesses across Canada. It was founded in 2014 under the leadership of Keith Henry, and our mandate is really to improve the socioeconomic situation of Indigenous peoples across the 10 provinces and 3 territories. So we do this through economic development advisory services, conferences, professional development training and workshops, through research, and we work very closely with the travel trade around the world to support sales and marketing on behalf of our export-ready Indigenous tourism businesses. So from a national perspective, we work with our industry, our businesses, but we strengthen that through our partners in the provinces and territories. And that's really where the grassroots and the community work comes in. So in many ways, ITAC is working to build a system here in Canada so that we can elevate these Indigenous tourism businesses across Canada so that they can highlight and showcase the unique experiences, culture, traditions that we have here in what we call Turtle Island. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm coming virtually to this platform on the unceded traditional territories of the Hupetchisset and Sechot First Nations, also known as Port Alberni on Vancouver Island in Canada. So in terms of different, yes, I think we're doing something different, but in a very traditional way, is how I would put it. So Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit people have approached not only their tourism businesses, but their ways of life through a very deeply inherent and connected way. And that worldview is different from a Western perspective. And I think that Western perspective around responsible tourism is only starting to be understood and respected, in the last decade and 15 years. So when I say different, I think it's different from an ancient knowledge and a knowing through that wisdom that's passed down. And we see that through our tourism businesses and the way that we develop our marketing and development plans.
Now, this is a question for the both of you. And again, I'm wondering, I seem to do a lot of wondering. If you see some similarities in the approaches to responsible tourism that you've been talking about, would regenerative tourism be a better description of what you're talking about? And I know we talked about this earlier, but how's that different in your view from responsible tourism? Kalani, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. As an agency, we've been using the term regenerative tourism, partially because we felt like the idea that just protecting something wasn't enough and that it had to go beyond that. It had to regenerate what was. I think for us as Indigenous leaders, so for the first time in our history at the Hawaii Tourism Authority, a state agency, our board chair, CEO, and myself as chief brand officer are all Native Hawaiians. And that's the first time that we've had this kind of Indigenous leadership at the top of our agency. And so I think it's a really invigorating time for us as Native peoples to understand that our worldview and our values are at the center of our decision making. And we're in every room where decisions are being made and oftentimes making those decisions. And so that comes with a great amount of responsibility. But yeah, I think to your question about regenerative versus responsible, it's all good. I think it's a good, better, best sort of situation is how we sort of approached it. And again, for us in a Hawaiian lens and a Hawaiian worldview, our creation story tells us that we come from the land. We're actually its younger sibling. And so in our creation story, there are responsibilities of elder siblings to take care of the younger and the younger to take care of the older. And that kind of symbiotic relationship amongst generations is something that's perpetuated to this day. And so when we apply that to a context of tourism, how do visitors participate and give back to a place when they visit it? And really that's sort of been our latest push in Malama Hawaii. You might have seen it in Sue's background, is really the term malama, which means to care for, which is a core cultural value for us. And so everybody knows us for aloha and our aloha spirit, and that's true, and we'll keep that going. But the sister sort of value to that, if you will, is malama and to care for. So yeah, regenerative for us.
Genevieve?
Yeah, I want to echo a lot of what Kalani shared. ITAC is also Indigenous led, and we're really proud to have so many Indigenous and Métis and Inuit representatives, not just from an organizational perspective, but within our partnerships and in our leadership. And I think that really strengthens the way that we build and grow as an industry, and why it's so important to have these organizations in place so that we can continue to have these authentic Indigenous experiences and ensure that the stories and the voices are being told authentically and not just from, I guess, in Canada, a colonial perspective. And really it kind of bridges this gap between visitors and host, because it's all around healing. And in Canada, we're talking about healing from a reconciliation perspective, but also from a tourism behavioral perspective. And Indigenous tourism is a platform for that. And the way I see kind of regenerative and responsible and sustainable tourism is kind of an evolution. And Angela touched on this as well. There's layers to it, but in its simplest form, regeneration is the process of restoring and rebalancing and allowing, the social, cultural, and environmental assets to regenerate. And Indigenous people in Canada and around the world have been doing that since time immemorial. So in the context of tourism, I would say, instead of focusing on perhaps the growth, we're more interested in how we can contribute to those social, cultural, and environmental well-being. And that's where my passion lies. And that's why I'm contributing in this sector and in this industries, because I want to be a good ally. I'm non-Indigenous, but I see regenerative tourism, I guess, guiding a pathway for Indigenous people to be sovereign economically, through community, socially, and tourism just has so many positive impacts. And so when we think about regeneration or regenerative tourism, I think that's something that's been already naturally integrated within Indigenous people. And we're just using that term to help bridge that healing and understand it in a maybe perhaps more of a westernized perspective. But it's something that's been embodied by Indigenous people for a long time.
Hey, Bob, could I maybe just add one quick thing?
Certainly.
I think, thanks, Genevieve, for that, because I believe in the altruistic sort of view of tourism as a means to bring people together. And I really think as we travel and we experience cultures in a responsible way and we give back to places and we're mindful of our footprint and, what we're doing with things like Travel for Trees and things like that, that we really truly have an opportunity to create that, like, that resident visitor interaction is one term that we use to kind of describe it. But as that happens, I think for us in Hawaii, we truly believe that we can change the world. And it's those interactions and those special moments that really do leave the lasting impact with a visitor once they leave your destination. So, yeah.
I don't usually offer editorial comment, but it would be a good time for the world to start rebalancing itself with all that's going on. I also wanted to ask you, Kalani, how has the industry received the Hawaiian Tourism Authority's new vision of tourism? Has there been some pushback, and are there some challenges to that?
Bob, I think we've gotten mostly really good feedback from it. I think there are a few, some of the, I hope not to offend anyone, old timers in the industry, the stalwart sort of leaders that have been there for quite some time, and they want to make sure that what we're sharing in terms of malama does not dissuade people from thinking that you can have an enjoyable, restful, well sort of deserved rest when you're in Hawaii. And so it's not about not being able to rest and have fun and enjoy, experience Hawaii regional cuisine, whatever it may be. It's not about that you can't do those things, but it's how you go about doing and enjoying those things that I think Malama is trying to get at. So we have faced a little bit of, hey, why are you moving away from Hawaii as a place of rest and relaxation and enjoyment to this deeper message of Malama and what it means to care for yourself, and I think for others, and then for the place. And so when we thought, when we think about the pandemic, Malama Hawaii really was about how do you take care of your own wellness and your own health? How do you do things to take care of others? And then how do you take care of the place that you're living in or going to?
Genevieve, what about the Indigenous tourism industry? Are there challenges in getting people to understand the Indigenous view?
In short, I would say yes. Canada has a not so great past in terms of colonization, and to be more frank and open, it has only been in recent history that Canadians in particular are really waking up to the idea and understanding how Indigenous people have been oppressed through colonization. And that was really brought to light through the stories of the children being unearthed in Kamloops and the continuation of finding unmarked burial sites at residential schools across Canada. And I guess through that, there's been a platform for healing and awareness, and that's really taken into effect over the last couple of years. And as unfortunate and as horrific as that information and that news and that history is, I think now more than ever, Canadians and international visitors want to understand and become more informed around Indigenous people, culture, and they want to do that through experiences and through travel. So it's been a hard journey for people understanding Indigenous views and people just understanding Indigenous people in Canada in general. There's a lot of, I guess you could say, misinformation or just being naive or turning a blind eye to Canada's history. And then, we also face systemic barriers, and we have challenges with, our government and in terms of sometimes with funding or support. So, we do face some challenges. We also have seen a lot of successes. We underwent a research study during the pandemic, and we had to shift our marketing and our development support to more of a national focus, where normally we have an international focus. And through that research, we realized that Canadian residents don't know where to access or are not sure how to access Indigenous experiences. So we were able to really tap in and provide marketing initiatives, resources, and awareness campaigns across Canada, so that we could help change the narrative that there are authentic Indigenous experiences that are open and welcome, that communities want to receive travelers in a safe way, of course, during the pandemic, but especially during post-pandemic. And I think we're seeing that shift in people understanding a little bit more, but certainly there's still challenges.
Thank you. This is my last question before we go to the audience, but I'm wondering if you can offer some advice to travel agents on how to go about selling responsible or regenerative travel. What do they need to remember, and what do they need to tell their clients about this kind of travel or this kind of experience? Kalani?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really evolving the message. For us, I think a lot of times when we think about Hawaii, I think there are immediate images that are conjured in people's minds. And so really it's how do we educate people about, like what Genevieve was talking about, where are these deeper, more authentic and richer experiences, and how do you access them? And then I think the next piece of it, for us as a state agency, sorry, I sound like a broken record, but really how do we start to look at the economics of it? How do we start to take the $13 billion in visitor spending in the Hawaiian Islands and direct it toward those small and micro businesses? How do we use tourism as a catalyst for economic development within our Indigenous community and broader local community to really ensure that the benefits of tourism are actually reaching those who need it best? And how do we start to create intergenerational wealth and start to address some of these challenges that for us as Native Hawaiians, I think one common misperception is people don't understand that Hawaii's Hawaiian sovereignty was overthrown in 1893. Our queen was literally held at gunpoint. And so a lot of people just think about Mai Tais and beaches and hula girls. And we're actually there's a much deeper narrative here. And so for us as Hawaiians today, we live in a time where we're still maybe just 1 or 2 generations removed from the overthrow of our country. And so how do we start to tell those deeper stories in an authentic way not to make people feel uncomfortable or not welcome, because we still do want visitors to come here, because we believe, again, that as people travel and experience cultures and learn deeper stories of places, that those are the meaningful experiences that they sort of cherish for life.
Yeah.
I always tell people, I see people get off the jet bridge at the airport and they sort of just take a deep breath when they get to Hawaii. And I don't know why, and I don't know what that is. And I also know that a lot of people won't remember the things that are said to them, but there's something about Hawaii that there's a feeling, and that feeling sticks with people. And I'm sure that's true of other places across the globe that we can travel to. But it's really, how do we kind of move toward a conscious way of traveling where we seek out those kind of opportunities in a respectful way, that I think really is the transformational part that we're trying to get to on this path toward what we might term regenerative tourism.
Genevieve?
Yeah, I kind of want to approach this maybe in kind of two folds. One from the tourist perspective, and then another from the travel agent's perspective. And I think from the tourist perspective, there's still a lot of work to be done. And I mean, there's a lot of work to be done in general, but I think there's kind of this visitor evolution, and it comes from just personal experience as a traveler myself. It takes time to understand and to decolonize the way you travel and see the world and ultimately yourself, right? So I think there's still a lot of like consciousness building within our visitor economy that's going to take time that we're going to see, I guess, kind of see those differences in travel behavior. So people are going to make mistakes along the way, but I think if we continue to, push the narrative around being curious, about being responsible, and to travel with a sense of wanting to respect the people and the places that you're visiting, then you're headed in the right direction. And that's where I kind of see the second piece coming into play with travel agents, around, asking, what level of consumer awareness perhaps do they already have, and what are their travel motivations, so that you can help to pinpoint perhaps the right experiences for them. And obviously that's something that they probably already integrate, but come with a lens of being more, I guess, culturally aware and curious. So for the travel agents, I think there's an important part. They are an important part of the supply chain, and they also have a responsibility for upholding best practices within the tourism industry too. So how do we equip them for this? How do we provide, I guess, culturally sensitive or sensitivity training? Have more accessible panels like this one, connecting them to organizations, for example, like ITAC or Kalani is the Hawaii Tourism Authority, and then maintaining those relationships. I think perhaps having those connections is really important. And then, just a plug from ITAC's perspective, when travel agents are working with us, we've launched our original brand and our Project Rise. So these are programs that we've integrated here in Canada to ensure that our businesses are accredited, that our members are accredited, and they're certified to really high business standards. And this shares the story around authentic experiences. So that speaks to the visitors and to the travel agents and lets them know that this brand is a safe brand, is an authentic brand, and that you're going into communities and supporting them socially, culturally, protecting the environment, the biodiversity. And that's one way that we've addressed, we've addressed regenerative tourism or responsible tourism through the visitor lens.
Well, thank you very much. That's the end for me with my questions. I'm just hoping that there's some questions from the audience. Much appreciated. I like to be in at the beginning of the story, so just keep telling it. I'm happy to listen.
Thank you so much, Kalani and Genevieve. And for anyone attending this webinar that'd like to ask a question, feel free to do so now. You can submit those to either the chat box or the Q&A box, which are both on the right-hand side of the screen. And while we're waiting for those, I'd like to mention that Baxter Media is a new partner of Trees for Travel, and that everyone who's attending this webinar, attending the live version of this webinar, will get a tree from Trees for Travel. So we can send you some information about that tomorrow when the recording gets distributed. And again, you guys can submit those to either the chat box or the Q&A box. If there's no questions, that's fine too, but we'll allow a minute for you guys to type them out.
No
While questions. I was gonna say no questions. I just wanted to I want to say, Kalani, it was really great hearing from you, and thank you, Bob, for facilitating this panel. It's always such a privilege to share my insight and the work that ITAC and the team does, but to also hear what other people are doing around the world. It's always so inspiring. So thank you. I really appreciated this.
Well, I can ask you a question if you want, because I think terminology is one of the things that troubles this industry sometimes. We talk about selling travel and travel products. I mean, what you're talking about really doesn't lend itself to the description of being a product. So, you got any different words that might describe it better? Have I stumped you?
I'll say this: we, in Hawaii and in Hawaii, we really, really try to stay away from the term sell. It's a really touchy word for us. Real estate in particular is something that drives a lot of Native Hawaiians to move and has created a diaspora of Native Hawaiians across the globe. And so for the first time in the 2010 census, we learned that there were more Native Hawaiians abroad than in our homeland. And so that's really disheartening. And so when we think about terms in tourism in particular, selling Hawaii is definitely one we don't use.
About telling the story of Hawaii? Or
absolutely.
Telling the story of Indigenous Canada.
And I agreed. The language is so important, and we do use those words. Telling the story and sharing our story. Unfortunately, internally, like within the tourism industry, we still use, I guess, those words, those kind of capitalist, consumerist words. And I would love to see a shift in that. And I think that's part of decolonizing the way we do business, the way that we frame our language. And I agree with Kalani. It impacts Indigenous people when we say that we're selling a product, because it is more than that, and we try to move away from that. And it is definitely about sharing the story and highlighting the positive impacts that tourism has on the people and the place.
And other than there are several thank you messages in the chat box, including one from Darcy, who says, "I'm a freelance travel writer and I often write with responsible travel in mind. Just wanted to say the same conversations are happening in our corner of the travel industry, so thank you for this webinar." And then we have a couple of questions. We have time for these. So there's one from Judy and one from Steve. Judy says, "Authentic is often used when describing an experience or a business. Can you describe what authentic means to travel, or how do you evaluate that?"
Yeah. Internally, ITAC has also had quite a journey with that word, and along with our membership. And it's one that we're currently still using because we haven't quite found a solution for it. I guess one of our solutions is the original brand, kind of an homage to the original people of the land, and we are the original. But from, I guess, dissecting the word authentic, the way that we look at it is, as long as it's Indigenous led and it's an Indigenous tourism business, that's kind of the basis and the foundation of it. We don't look at, I guess, blood quantums or how Indigenous you are in terms of that. I won't even say more about that. That's kind of scary territory, especially as a non-Indigenous person. But we want to highlight that the experiences that people are having and that we're offering are coming from a place of oral histories, and they are connected to community and they're connected to place, and we're celebrating those people and those traditions.
Yeah, I would add, we've had that same journey, I think, with the term authentic. Authenticity in general is something that is different from place to place. And so when you think about the Hawaiian Islands, there are 8 main islands, and each of them and each of the communities within them may have different takes on certain practices or certain things. And so even the terms or words used for specific things the thing may be the same, but the word on a different island may be different. And so when you talk about authenticity, it really is place-based. And that's the best way we've been able to approach the term, is just ensuring that people understand that there is that differentiation on island and community and dialect of Hawaiian language or things like that. But I think at the end of the day, for us, we always focus on, is it of Hawaii? Is it of place? And does it have a connection to place? And when you start to connect the product, I'm using my bunny ears there, with the place, is where we start to get into a more comfortable space with using the term authentic.
Thanks so much, Kalani and Genevieve. And I'll read out just one more question from the audience here. Sarah asks, Kalani, can you tell us more about the efforts to educate visitors about Hawaii and responsible behaviors before they arrive?
Sure. At minimum, all of our branding campaigns right now are around this topic of Malama Hawaii, how to care for Hawaii. And so everything that you'll see out of our partners globally is that message of Malama Ku'uhome, how do you care for your beloved home? And I think the next piece of it, the next layer of it, is really this comprehensive sort of strategy of the traveler journey, beginning at the inspiration and awareness and maybe that open end of the funnel, and then following that all the way through. And so as our partners, as hotels, you folks and travel trade agents, following that messaging all the way through is really critical for us. It continues in flight, in the videos in flight with many airline partners. We also have messaging in our airports. We do targeted social ads. We do all kinds of things along that whole traveler journey to try to educate people. My last point I would make, and maybe this is a little bit of a controversial one for me back home, but I always say Hawaii is a mirror. And what I mean by that is if you come to Hawaii with humility, respect, and aloha, you'll get that tenfold. If you come with anything other than that, you won't get aloha. And if you ask us where our aloha is and why don't you have that aloha spirit, I think we'll explain why, but you might not like it. So, for us, it's really, how do you approach a place? What kind of intent do you have when you travel? And if you come and you didn't know and you offend somebody, but it wasn't malicious, it's often forgiven. But if you come with this intent of like, I paid for this trip, I get this experience, or I get this, and you expect that aloha from us, I think that's where we get friction with local residents in Hawaii. And so what I always encourage visitors to do is, if you think about aloha and you think about what it means, you have to practice it first. And it's reciprocal.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kalani. And from all of us here at Baxter Media, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this webinar today. If you happen to miss part of the webinar, the recording will be made available tomorrow on the Baxter Media YouTube channel, and I'll also be emailing it to all of you directly. But yeah, I would like to give a huge thank you and shout out to Angela Nagy, Nico Nicholas, Genevieve Hano, Kalani Ka'ana'ana, and Stephanie Bishop. And thank you so much to Susan Webb and Bob Moet as well. Thank you so much for moderating.
Take care.
Take care, everyone. Bye
Aloha.
now.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you.